Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our discussion. Today we are exploring a very important question. Can studying history truly help us avoid making the same mistakes over and over again? It's a question people have asked for centuries. Do we learn the lessons the past teaches us? To help us explore this, we have two expert guests. First, Dr. Eleanor Vance, a historian who believes that history offers clear lessons we can use. Welcome, Dr. Vance.
Thank you for having me, Sophia.
And second, Mr. Kenji Tanaka, a psychologist and sociologist who is perhaps a little more skeptical about our ability to apply these lessons effectively. Welcome, Mr. Tanaka.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Our discussion today will start with opening statements from both our guests. Then, they will have a chance to respond to each other's points. After that, we'll discuss how we might become better at learning from the past. Finally, Dr. Vance and Mr. Tanaka will offer their closing thoughts. Let's begin. Dr. Vance, would you please start us off with your opening statement?
Certainly, Sophia, thank you. I believe strongly that history serves as an essential guide for humanity. It is like a vast library filled with stories of what worked and what didn't work in the past. By studying these stories, these historical events, we can understand the consequences of certain actions and decisions. This understanding gives us the chance to make better choices in the present and avoid repeating failures. Let's consider international relations, for example. After World War I, the Treaty of Versailles imposed very hard conditions on Germany. Many historians agree that these harsh terms created resentment and economic problems, which helped lead to World War II. The world seemed to learn a lesson from this terrible mistake. After World War II, the approach was different, particularly in Western Europe. The Marshall Plan focused on rebuilding economies, including Germany's. This strategy aimed to create stability and cooperation, not punishment. It contributed significantly to decades of peace and economic growth in the region. This shows a clear attempt to learn and apply a lesson. We see similar learning in public health. Think about how we respond to epidemics today compared to the past. The 1918 Spanish flu pandemic, or earlier cholera outbreaks, taught us hard lessons about how diseases spread. Because we studied these events, we understand the importance of hygiene, sanitation, quarantine measures, and rapid vaccine development much better. Our modern public health strategies are built directly on the knowledge gained from past health crises. We learned what actions save lives and which conditions make things worse. Economics provides another strong example. The Great Depression in the 1930s was a devastating global event. Studying its causes, like unregulated banking and stock market speculation, led to important changes. Governments introduced regulations to control financial markets. They created safety nets, such as deposit insurance, to protect people's savings if banks fail. While economic crises still happen, these measures have helped prevent a complete collapse like the one seen in the 1930s. These examples show that history offers clear warnings and models for success. It shows us the likely outcomes of different paths. If we take the time to study history carefully and understand its lessons, we are definitely better prepared to avoid repeating the most costly mistakes of the past. It's not about predicting the future perfectly, but about making more informed choices based on past experience.
Thank you, Dr. Vance, for that clear perspective on history as a teacher. Now, let's hear the opening statement from Mr. Kenji Tanaka. Mr. Tanaka, what are your thoughts on this?
Thank you, Sophia. Dr. Vance makes some excellent points, and I agree that history is incredibly valuable. It provides us with a rich source of information about human behavior and societal development. However, I am more cautious about its power to effectively prevent us from repeating mistakes. My skepticism comes from considering factors beyond just the historical record itself, factors like human psychology and the ever-changing nature of our world. Firstly, we need to consider human psychology. We are not always rational learners. We are influenced by cognitive biases, mental shortcuts, or patterns of thinking that can lead to errors in judgment. For example, there's the optimism bias, where we tend to believe that bad things are less likely to happen to us than to others. This can make us ignore historical warnings because we think, that won't happen this time, or we're different now. Then there's confirmation bias, where we actively look for information that supports what we already believe and ignore information that challenges our views. This makes it difficult to learn objectively from history, especially if the lessons contradict our preferred ideas or political positions. Secondly, the context in which historical events occurred is often very different from our present situation. The world is constantly changing due to technological advancements, globalization, shifts in social values, and environmental changes. A solution or a lesson learned in the 19th century might not be directly applicable to the challenges of the 21st century. Applying historical lessons without carefully considering the differences in context can sometimes lead to new mistakes. Think about military strategies from past wars, applied to modern conflicts involving cyber warfare or drones. The historical lesson might be irrelevant or even dangerous. Thirdly, political and social factors often override historical wisdom. Leaders and societies might understand the historical precedents, but choose to ignore them due to political ambition, powerful ideologies, economic pressures, or strong nationalistic feelings. Short-term gains or political survival can seem more important than long-term consequences suggested by history. Consider the persistence of conflicts over resources or territory. History is full of examples showing the devastating human and economic costs of war. Yet, nations continue to engage in conflicts, often driven by the same factors seen time and time again. Or look at recurring economic bubbles, from tulip mania centuries ago to housing bubbles more recently. Despite knowing the history of speculative bubbles and crashes, people often get caught up in the excitement and belief that this time is different, fueled by greed or fear of missing out. So while history provides valuable data and stories, our human nature, our biases, our emotions, and the complexities of the present often act as significant barriers. These barriers prevent us from consistently and effectively using historical knowledge to avoid repeating mistakes. It's not that history isn't useful, but its preventative power is, in my view, quite limited in practice.
Thank you, Mr. Tanaka, for presenting those important counterarguments about human nature and changing contexts. We now move into the rebuttal phase. Dr. Vance, you have the first opportunity to respond to Mr. Tanaka's points.
Thank you, Sophia. Mr. Tanaka raises valid points about the challenges we face in learning from the past, particularly regarding cognitive biases and changing contexts. I don't disagree that these challenges exist. However, I see the study of history itself as one of the primary tools we have to address them. Regarding human bias, Mr. Tanaka is right that biases like optimism or confirmation bias cloud our judgment. But how do we become aware of these biases and their potential consequences? History provides countless examples of leaders and societies making terrible mistakes precisely because of these biases. By studying events where overconfidence led to disaster, or where people ignored evidence that contradicted their beliefs, we learn to recognize these patterns. Historical analysis, done well, encourages critical thinking and questioning assumptions, including our own. So, history isn't just a record of mistakes. It's a training ground for developing the self-awareness needed to potentially overcome the biases that cause them. On the point of changing context, yes, the world changes. Technology evolves. Societies transform. We cannot simply copy-paste solutions from the past. However, I would argue that while the specific details change, certain fundamental patterns of human behavior, power dynamics, and the consequences of actions like aggression, appeasement, or unchecked greed often remain remarkably consistent. The context of the Peloponnesian War in ancient Greece is vastly different from today, but Thucydides' observations about fear, honor, and interest-driving conflict still resonate. The lesson isn't about using ancient Greek military tactics, but about understanding the enduring drivers of conflict. Furthermore, Mr. Tanaka himself mentioned how political factors can override historical lessons. But sometimes, history provides the very impetus to overcome those factors. Consider the creation of the United Nations after World War II. This was a direct, conscious effort by world leaders to learn from the failures of the League of Nations, which had been unable to prevent the war. Despite the political difficulties and national interests involved, the historical lesson of the League's failure was powerful enough to motivate the creation of a new, hopefully stronger, international body. It shows that deliberate learning and application, even on complex international scales, is possible. So while the path isn't easy, history provides both the warnings and the tools to help us navigate it more wisely.
Thank you, Dr. Vance. Mr. Tanaka, your response to Dr. Vance?
Thank you. Dr. Vance argues compellingly that history helps us recognize biases and that certain patterns persist. I appreciate her point about history potentially fostering self-awareness. However, I remain concerned about the practical application. Regarding patterns, while I agree some exist, there's a significant danger in oversimplifying them or applying them to situations where the differences are actually more important than the similarities. Drawing the wrong analogy from history can be just as damaging as ignoring history altogether. Leaders might use a historical comparison to justify a course of action, but if the comparison is flawed because the context is fundamentally different, the resulting policy could be disastrous. We need deep contextual understanding, not just pattern recognition. Dr. Vance suggests that awareness of biases, gained through history, can counter them. From a psychological perspective, awareness is often just the first and sometimes insufficient step. Knowing intellectually that optimism bias exists doesn't automatically stop someone from making overly optimistic plans, especially when strong emotions, social pressures, or political calculations are involved. Think about financial markets again. Many people involved in recent financial crises likely had historical knowledge of previous bubbles and crashes. Yet, the immediate pressures of competition, the desire for profit, and perhaps groupthink overrode that historical knowledge. Awareness didn't translate into preventative action for many. Dr. Vance mentioned the UN as a success story of learning. While its creation was indeed a response to past failures, we must also acknowledge its limitations and the many conflicts it has been unable to prevent. This shows that even when we try to build structures based on historical lessons, ongoing political realities and human factors continue to challenge their effectiveness. Let me offer a counterexample regarding political behavior. History clearly teaches about the dangers of divisive rhetoric, scapegoating, and polarizing populations. We have seen repeatedly how such tactics can lead to social unrest, discrimination, and even violence. Yet, we frequently see political figures employ these very tactics because they can be effective in mobilizing a base or winning elections in the short term. The immediate political advantage often seems to outweigh the known historical risks. This demonstrates how easily historical lessons can be ignored when they conflict with immediate goals or perceived necessities. So, while I value history, I maintain that the gap between knowing the past and changing present behavior remains wide and difficult to cross.
Thank you both for those insightful rebuttals. It seems we have a clear tension here. Dr. Vance sees history as a vital map, offering crucial guidance based on past journeys. Mr. Tanaka, while appreciating the map, points out that the driver, us, humans, often ignores it, misreads it due to biases, or finds the roads have changed too much. Let's talk about practicalities. How can we bridge this gap? Dr. Vance, starting with you. If we want history's lessons to be more effective, how should we teach and present it? Perhaps differently than we do now. What skills should we focus on in schools and through media?
That's a crucial question, Sophia. I believe we need to move beyond simply memorizing dates and names. History education should focus on developing critical thinking skills. Students need to learn how to analyze sources, understand different perspectives on the same event, identify cause and effect, and recognize patterns and continuities. We should encourage asking why things happened and what were the consequences, rather than just what happened. Presenting history through stories that highlight human choices and dilemmas can make it more relatable, and its lessons more apparent. Connecting past events to current issues explicitly can also help students see the relevance of history to their own lives and the world today.
Thank you, Dr. Vance. Mr. Tanaka, building on that and knowing the psychological barriers you've described, what can individuals and societies do to become better learners? How can we encourage the self-reflection needed to apply historical lessons more wisely?
That requires a conscious effort, both individually and collectively. Firstly, promoting media literacy is essential. We need to be critical consumers of information, understanding how historical narratives can be shaped or manipulated for political or other purposes. Secondly, we need to actively cultivate awareness of our own cognitive biases. This means encouraging self-reflection, questioning our own assumptions, and being open to information that challenges our beliefs, perhaps seeking out historical interpretations that differ from our initial understanding. Education systems and public discourse could do more to discuss these psychological tendencies openly. Finally, fostering empathy is important. Trying to understand the perspectives and motivations of people in the past, even those with whom we disagree, can help us understand the complexities of human behavior and perhaps recognize similar dynamics today.
It seems you both agree, then, that how we engage with history is key. Dr. Vance emphasizes critical analysis of the past, and Mr. Tanaka emphasizes critical awareness of ourselves in the present. Perhaps true learning requires both.
Yes, I would agree with that. Historical understanding without self-awareness can lead to misapplication, and self-awareness without historical context lacks grounding.
Indeed, the two must go hand in hand. Understanding past mistakes involves understanding the human tendencies that drove them, tendencies that likely still exist within us.
Excellent. We're moving towards the end of our discussion. Let's have your closing statements. Dr. Vance, please share your final thoughts.
Thank you. To conclude, I maintain that history, while not a perfect predictor, is our most valuable source of collective experience. It holds the memories of our species, our triumphs, and our failures. Ignoring this vast resource, as Mr. Tanaka rightly implies, happens too often, is far riskier than attempting to learn from it, even if our learning is imperfect. We should remember the successes built upon past failures, advancements in human rights, developments in diplomacy, progress in science. These often came from recognizing what went wrong before. My final appeal is this. Let us commit to studying our past thoughtfully, critically, and with the intention of applying its lessons, however complex, to build a better future. It's our best chance.
Thank you, Dr. Vance. Mr. Tanaka, your closing statement?
History is undoubtedly valuable, providing essential context and insight. However, we must approach it with humility and a realistic understanding of its limitations as a preventative tool. Simply knowing what happened before is not enough. Understanding our current context, our own psychological tendencies, and the specific pressures of the present moment are just as crucial for making wise decisions. We must guard against the simplistic application of historical lessons, ensuring we consider the differences as much as the similarities. My final thought is that we should use history as one important tool among many, combining it with critical thinking about the present and awareness of our own human nature to navigate the complexities of the future.
Thank you, Mr. Tanaka. And thank you both, Dr. Vance and Mr. Tanaka, for sharing your thoughtful perspectives on this complex question. You've highlighted the core tension. History offers invaluable lessons, yet human psychology and changing circumstances make applying them consistently very difficult. Perhaps the most important takeaway today is not a simple yes or no answer to whether history can prevent mistakes. Instead, it's about how we can improve our collective ability to learn from the past. This involves better education, fostering critical thinking, promoting self-awareness about our biases, and engaging with history more deeply and relevantly. Thank you.